Welcome to the Growth Buyer Podcast, where we engage with top business leaders who share their experiences and provide real insights that help them attract customers, retain staff, and grow their bottom line. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi there, I'm Kevin Horrigan, host of the show, where I feature inspiring business leaders from various backgrounds and industries who are willing to share their stories and insights. Today's podcast is brought to you by Spinutech. At Spinutech, we help middle market and larger companies get more leads. Hey, who doesn't want more leads? And we do that through an end-to-end digital approach, starting with your website and making sure it has the right aesthetic appeal and convincing content to convert visitors into action. And then we start to look at all of your digital marketing tactics, organic search engine optimization, paid search, email marketing, marketing automation, and we help you attract more visitors, accelerate their interest, and ultimately take action. Spinutech, thank you so much for your sponsorship today. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to www.spin.tech.com. That's spinutech.com. Well, today's guest is Sharon Toerek, CEO of Toerek Law. Sharon devotes her time in helping creative professionals protect, enforce, and monetize their creative assets. She's a frequent conference speaker in marketing legal issues and top marketing industry events. Today, Sharon's going to talk about the risks and opportunities associated by a very popular topic today, AI. And Sharon, we hear so much about AI, dying to hear about the legal side because we talk so much about the opportunity side. We don't talk about the risk side so much. We're super excited to hear what Sharon has to share there. Also want to give a shout out to Drew McClellan, who's introduced you and I together. What Drew does for other agencies is incredible with the Agency Management Institute. So Drew, I want to give you a shout out. Thank you for introducing Sharon and I. And Sharon, want to welcome you to our podcast.
Thanks, Kevin. It's great to be here with you. And I agree. Shout out to Drew for putting us together.
Absolutely. So Sharon, before we get started into this brilliant AI conversation and risk and legal, all the stuff we're going to talk about today, we back up for just a moment and let's talk about where you grew up, what little Sharon wanted to be when she turned into a professional and all that kind of stuff.
So I grew up, I'm a proud lifelong Cleveland, Ohio resident. We still headquarter the firm here, even though we have a distributed model of serving clients and we have team members in a bunch of different states. But what did I want to be when I was, well, I'm only 4'11", Kevin, so I'm still kind of little. But when I was a child, I probably wanted to be like a backup singer for a rock and roll band. And I am still a devoted car and shower singer to this day. I'm pretty good at it, if I do say so myself. It wasn't probably until I was, in high school or college that I started thinking about a career in the law. And I had all this interest in public policy. I had all this interest in sort of how government worked. And when I told my dad I wanted to go to law to major in political science as an undergrad, he said, "What are you going to do with that?" He says, "Do you want to go to law school or something?" And I never really thought about it. So I said, "Okay, yeah, I want to go to law school." And it kind of just mushroomed from there. And here we are today, Kevin, all these years later.
Well, that's cool. So little Sharon still only being 4'11", we get that. But I mean, where would you be if American Idol was back, was back on when you were growing up? Perhaps you'd be that backup singer.
It's a solid question. I don't know. Or I think it was Star Search when we were kids, right? That was the earlier version of American Idol before it was American Idol.
Oh, yes. Before Al Gore founded the internet. Yes, of course. So Sharon, there's not a day that goes by that AI isn't spoken about in the digital world. And I think it's spoken about as maybe this fantastic opportunity that we haven't seized yet. It's spoken about maybe some organizations that maybe have broken through. We read about it. Valuations today of companies who have very little revenue with billion-dollar valuations about the potential of artificial intelligence. We hear about it all the time. Can you tell me a little bit more from your perspective as a lawyer, what you're seeing on the AI front, besides what we're seeing about all the sizzle side of things? Can you give us a little perspective on the legal side?
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that this is just as much like many other technological developments or economic developments that we think are going to have this huge and immediate sea change in the way we all do business. And the truth is, it takes a lot of time for these things to weave their way into our companies, our day-to-day work practices. And so from the legal side, what we are primarily looking to learn from what policymakers might do with respect to regulating AI to what the courts might do with some of the cases that are currently just in their beginnings is what will ultimately be the status of copyright ownership for works that are created using some sort of generative AI technology, and what are the liabilities associated with using the output from generative AI. In my world, it's in your marketing campaign because our clients are marketers, marketing agencies, but it could be any kind of original, creative, or proprietary work that a company makes. Who will own it, and what do you do if it unintentionally infringes? And who's responsible for all of this? And so I think that's sort of the problems we're starting to sort through, the challenges we're starting to start through. And, and each of them creates their own opportunities for resolution. We're seeing closed AI systems to sort of skirt around the issue of using publicly available information on the input side so that you can limit your liability on the output side.
Right.
And other sorts of iterations that hopefully will address some of these challenging questions.
Yeah, no, and I think digging a little deeper into that, Sharon, I think you said like we're on the beginning of the wave of what AI could potentially be. As I shared just a second ago, I'm reading the Wall Street Journal every day and watching these companies with very little revenue having more than billion-dollar valuations already. So people are speculating with dollars, not opinion. They're
Right.
speculating with dollars that this is going to be huge. You mentioned, who's going to own these derivative works and things of that nature. Has there been any transactions or any case study or law yet of the outcome of where AI ended up being a liability yet, or are there active cases?
There are. So the clearest indication we have so far about the question of who owns work when it consists of contributions generated from AI plus contributions that are human created. And this is the big question with most creative companies is, what if we used some resources that came out of generative AI, and then what if we combined human created work along with it? Who owns that then? And so we have a little bit of guidance from the United States Copyright Office, which came from a graphic novel example of all things. The author created a graphic novel. She got illustrations out of Midjourney, which she was very transparent about, but she created the storyline. She wrote the copy. She arranged the illustrations in the graphic novel. And she originally achieved a copyright registration for the whole work. And then the Copyright Office got wind of the fact that she had used artificial intelligence for the illustrations, and so they canceled her copyright registration. So then she got counsel, and I'll save you all the steps, but the net of it was that the Copyright Office decided that she could hold copyright in her original contributions. So the writing, the arrangement of the illustrations, which is also something that's copyrightable, and then not the illustrations themselves. So we have a little bit of guidance there on what happens if you can clearly put barriers between what AI creates and what humans create. Since then, we've got a few court cases that sort of are trying to tackle the issue of what if copyright protected works get input into a generative AI platform,
right?
And then they show up in the output on the other side. Is that an infringement? And we don't know yet. We don't know how courts are going to handle this. What a lot of legal experts are predicting is that the court will kind of split the baby, and that it won't be a violation of copyright, maybe to input the works, to train the data sets, but it might be an infringement on the outside to use those works as derivatives of the original. So the New York Times case is probably the most closely watched right now, and it's one of the newest ones against OpenAI on this issue. The AP had similar issues with OpenAI, and they settled their case with a licensing deal. So we'll see what happens, with respect to some of these things.
And so, I heard every word you said there, Sharon, and just trying to process it for my layperson mind. The case where the young lady, took it to the copyright panel. They allowed her organic content she created to be, and her her illustrations, but the end work product she could not copyright because it used some generative AI to get there.
Correct. And she was completely transparent about it. So, I mean, I do scratch my head. What I don't know about this case, and what I will look deeper into one of these days when I have a moment, is why didn't they know in the first place at the Copyright Office? Because she was completely transparent about using Midjourney for illustrations. But, the issue becomes, and we represent a lot of creators, a lot of agencies. What happens when you can't draw the line clearly, between a lot of creators will use AI for inspiration, for first drafts, for concepting, and then they evolve their stuff from there. There's no clear-cut answer yet, and so I think those will be the tricky questions.
And as a layperson, again, there's the question would be: there's no known sources of places where you go to AI that's only indexing uncopyrighted work so far as potentially be a safety blanket. Does that exist yet today?
Well, it's the problem. It may or in the near future. The challenge is that you've got to be really clear about where they're getting their data. It's the open systems are getting it from the general internet, and most of that information is not current. But there are closed systems where they're being more discreet about the data inputs, and they're also a little bit more willing to indemnify or hold the user harmless because of the system being closed. So we'd have to kind of see how. I think these closed systems will rise in popularity and in frequency of use because there's just more comfort around them.
And I think that's a great answer. It's potentially closed systems. They're closed by not allowing everything and everything to go into it. So what is it that they're closing to that's trying to provide some type of protection? And looks like you see that's going to be potentially something that's going to grow and expand to give creators more comfort level of what they're leveraging, is more risk averse than potentially just using anything that's open to everything.
Right. More risk aversion and more understanding of what the quality of the inputs might be.
So because,
it's a smaller universe of content, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sharon, so I know you represent a lot of agencies, a lot of creative agencies, things of that nature. Anything come to mind of where AI has been put in use and it's like help propel your client or your client's client to the next level? Any thoughts there where you've seen AI just absolutely break through?
I am seeing the biggest jumps and leaps when creative teams and agencies integrate AI tools into their content creation. It is reducing the amount of time it takes to get from concept to completed product. It is it is providing good quality for most purposes, and it is enabling. And this is one of the things it's a double-edged sword, because it's what created the fear initially for creative companies is, will we be replaced? Are we replaceable? I think no, because I think the human guardrails that need to be around this content and guard the brand, if you will, are going to be what prevail at the end of the day, and that's human contributed.
Right.
But I'm seeing them implement it mostly in the creation of words and pictures, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then to a lesser extent, I think some of them are really exploring how to use tools to make their workflows more efficient internally at the agency. And then, to some degree, some agencies are starting to think about creating their own closed systems, building their own platforms so that they can, particularly if they're niche focused and they need to know a lot, and they do know a lot about a particular industry or client vertical, it just makes sense for them to try to explore what having their own AI platform might do to be additive, whether it's from a production or a revenue generation standpoint.
No, all that completely makes sense. Totally get it. And I think, as you share, where you're seeing it leverages, potentially the content assets or graphic assets and things of that nature. Certainly here at Spinutech, we're using it to help us get some of that competitive advantage as well. I think we see it sometimes it's an opportunity to quality assure maybe some software applications and things of that nature to be able to get some input to help in that situation as well. It's interesting to hear you say some may actually be trying to create their own closed system to be able to leverage. That's an interesting approach as well. Obviously, controlling the input so that what you're querying is a quality source, and hopefully one that's protected from a risk perspective as well. That's an interesting approach that I could see some agencies wanting to be able to also represent back to their clients, that they feel that there's no risk in what they're creating. One, being outdated data; two, potentially having third party issues down the road from a legal perspective as well. So
Right.
that is a question that's asked, and it does seem in this newness of AI, a little bit of the wild west where it's still a little bit undefined. And you're mentioning some current use cases that are out there, but like you said earlier, we're just kind of monitoring to see what they're doing so far, because there isn't a whole lot of activity so far to see where it's landed, as much as some of it's still pending.
Right. And, and I know you and I have had another conversation about this in the past, and I don't remember if I said this or not at the time, but this is true of all technological advances as they're implemented in business, and then as the law sort of manages the risk associated. Technology is always going to be fastest, and then business sort of puts its sneakers on and runs after and adapts to technology based on its own sets of priorities. And then, we lawyers kind of sweep up the mess that's left behind. And so, unfortunately, the faster the technology moves, the bigger the lag time between that and when the law sort of settles some of these things.
Sure.
And that's kind of where we are now with, wanting to know what the potential liabilities are associated with using the content that comes out of AI, for example. And, what the best thing that businesses can do now is really having candid conversations about what's the use case, what's our risk tolerance, and what platforms do we think are the most appropriate for us to be
Right.
using right now.
Yeah, no, makes complete sense. So Sharon, I'm going to shift gears real quick. So you supply your lawyer, your target audience, I believe, is advertising agencies, as agencies. So as an agency owner myself, I'd be curious, how do you go to market to get new clients?
Well, I am a strong believer in spending time where my clients spend time. I'm a strong believer in talking to as many people in the industry as I can so I can understand their business perspective and figure out how the law addresses it and weaves into that. And so I'm an intellectual property lawyer by background, and came to work with marketers in my career based on my background, and then more narrowly agencies by design, because I saw the repetition of pattern and some of the questions that they had, the issues they were facing. And so just spending time where they spend time, developing deep industry knowledge in addition to keeping my team's legal skills sharp and making sure they intersect at all the right places has kind of been my recipe. And I started my own podcast, I don't know, 250 episodes ago or something like that, mostly because I wanted to have conversations like the one we're having now with people in the agency industry so that I could learn as much about what they were thinking and worried about every day. And so, I don't know, some people, I guess, call that authority marketing. Some people
Right.
call it networking. It's kind of a blend of all of the above, but it's really picking a niche and committing to really understanding it and serving it well. And it was in a very underserved community of
Yes.
businesses as well. And so, from that perspective, it made sense to invest the time to learn about what our clients were facing every day.
No, I appreciate that answer. I think we'll plug Drew McCullen one more time. He's always focusing. He's always telling agency owners to what is your niche? What is your niche? What is your niche? And you've actually found one in an industry that probably the advertising space probably isn't known to have a lot of legal representation and a lot of its decision making. It's a more of a creative industry than it is one that it thinks more creatively than it thinks about
Yes.
risk aversion or even risk association. And so definitely going after a vertical that doesn't have probably a lot of concentration of attorneys going after it, but also to your point, there's a lot of replication in what agencies are doing and potentially missing out on the intellectual property side that they could have some advantages or assets to.
Yeah.
as well as some of the opportunities to learn about AI and stuff too. But the intellectual property side, I think, was genius on your part to be able to go out and make agencies aware of how they can monetize some of what they've been doing that they don't realize there's a value for.
No, they don't. And I'm sitting on my hands a little bit here as we pivot to this part of the conversation, because that's my personal soapbox. Agencies' number one inventory is the intellectual property that they create every day. And I hold it second only to your human capital,
Right,
in your
yes.
business.
Yeah.
It is astounding how much an everyday agency undervalues the amount of intellectual property that they're creating, because they look at it as part and parcel of serving the client and
Correct.
creating for the client's benefit. But they're not frequently not taking a step back and looking in the four corners of the business to see what they have that is replicable, that is institutionalizable, if you will, and productizable. And I think we saw a little bit of interest during the pandemic when business got slow for agencies.
Sure.
And taking the time to sort of think about different revenue streams and how they might take what they know and package it differently.
Yes.
And so every time I get a chance to remind agencies that you're sitting on a lot of IP, you're sitting on a lot of industry knowledge or technical knowledge. And not every client is a good fit for you. So you could be productizing what you know in a more accessible way, perhaps, and scaling that in addition to your fee for service work. And IP is what helps you do that. And so it's kind of a passion point of mine, in case you hadn't picked up on that thread.
Well, and I see, tying that back to just our conversations earlier about artificial intelligence and what you see some agencies doing, today, and some of them, trying to create their own source of which they're going to be able to query to let AI run. The IP side of what that opportunity could be, and the value of that IP, being able to create their own control engine of where AI is indexing for, to be able to pull, its algorithm, responses back. Certainly seems to be a very high level of IP that could be very, very valuable in thinking about how the agency could differentiate itself and like you said, continue to build this intellectual property asset that many of us just feel like we're just trying to do the best possible job for our clients to please them as quickly and cost effectively as we can, so we can take their concepts to market. And we're so excited about getting through that finish line that the thought of the IP side of it gets lost in the desire to just continue to want to delight clients and have fun in the journey of what we do for a living.
Right. And it shows up in the way that we see many agencies typically, their default way of addressing the intellectual property question in their services agreements too.
Yes.
They kind of gloss over it. It's a work for hire. You won't either. And the worst case scenario is you, the client, you own it right away. Well, no, maybe you own it after you pay us for it. And maybe you own it after you pay us and you don't get all of it because some of it's ours and we need it to serve our next client. So it's definitely a consideration that needs to be addressed in your service agreements too, so that everybody's on the same page about who owns what at the end of the day and when.
Yeah, no, in going in my 26th year of being in the digital advertising space, I've made a few legal mistakes in my career, and intellectual property is one of those where it didn't have the term of making sure that you own the intellectual property after you paid for it in full. I made that mistake 20 years ago and, learned by the School of Hard Knocks that was an important attribute to make sure that it existed in the agreement. Not that they just own it, they had to pay for it before they own it. So, I highly recommend any agency owner out there to, contact Sharon to potentially review what you're doing, because the School of Hard Knocks is an expensive school to graduate from, and there's resources out there. And Sharon, I know, and maybe you can bring up right now too, I know you have some toolkits. I know you and I are talking about some of the toolkits because I need some legal help, but as you help your clients go and provide services for them, what have you created for your own intellectual property that maybe you could share?
I'm constantly, again, trying to sit on my hands to keep from thinking of the next thing. We've done a number of things. We definitely have a lot of IP build up around master service agreements, independent contractor relationships, agency to agency strategic alliances as a toolkit we've recently released, because a lot of agencies are collaborating in serving an end client, either on a white label or on a teaming basis. And we are about to release over the next month or two a collections toolkit for agencies, because we don't do that work, but we have
Yes.
clients who come to us and need help sometimes, collecting on client accounts, and we want to give them some tools to do that.
Yep.
We've had a membership product in the past where you could access not only the templates, but as well some online learning, video learning from us. And so I'm always experimenting with the best way to get this information out to the folks who need it most, and meeting them where they are,
Yeah.
at the point where they can access it. So it's a constant exercise. And I get it when agencies say it's not our first priority because we're serving clients every day.
Right.
But I also am a strong believer that if you hit the recipe right on the head, because I've seen agencies do this, create digital courses, create discovery products, just do a lot of things that are very systematized, scalable, and throw off their own revenue stream. So I know it works. You just have to
Right.
find the cocktail.
Yeah, no, absolutely makes sense. Sharon, you've done a great job, growing this niche practice. Let me ask you, have you had any mentors in your career? And if so, how did they help you, have the courage to go after this niche and things of that nature?
Yes, I have. I certainly have. I would say I would define my first mentor, although we didn't call it that type of relationship, but as a high school English teacher, when I first got put into AP English, because I wasn't in AP English all my life. I think I did it the last two, I don't know, maybe 3 years of high school. But my first AP English teacher, Marguerite Ruhrkraut, saw something in me that other educators maybe hadn't or didn't. I had great relationships with my teachers, but she was something special. And
Sure.
she took interest in me, and she helped me really sharpen my writing skills when I was her student. So I would call her my first mentor. I have had plenty of other mentors, former business partners. The partner I had in business before I started this firm, we didn't see eye to eye on probably a lot of things. We had a good relationship and a very amicable parting, but he was one who really taught me about thinking about my business as a business. A lot of lawyers think of their law practice just as a practice, as a
Right.
profession that's, very academic, it's very elite. Um, I really learned a lot about how to treat it like a business when we were in business together. And so I would say those are some of the, and then I would shout out to Drew McClellan, because Drew has taught me a lot about how to blend heart and business together in a way that's both lucrative but also helpful.
Yes.
And I continue to learn a lot from him every day about the way he servant leadership and the way that
Yes.
he helps people.
No, and I appreciate all those answers. Certainly our educators are ones that help shape the core of who our foundation is, and so we're
Yeah.
a byproduct of our upbringing. And so having those educators be able to be a good influence and stuff like that is, core of helping people get motivated to want to go to the next level. And I loved your answer about, former business partners who maybe thought more about just practicing law, but also practicing a sound business.
Right.
Absolutely resonate with that as well. As agency owners, we get so excited about, again, delighting our clients with the team who loves what we do for a living. I think they may have created a phrase called the starving artist around that to some degree. We can easily become the starving artist trying to delight our clients with a team who, just wants to continue to dig deeper and deeper and deeper to find new and exciting ways to delight our clients. But someone's got to be measuring the meter of how much is coming in versus how much is going out. And so
Yeah.
we have to be passionate about what we do for a living and who we do it with and who we do it for. But we also have to be passionate about where we have a company and we have some responsibilities there as well. And so learn it from your business partners. And then I will second your third shout out we're giving to Drew McClellan today. And I'm wondering if this podcast should be responsored by Agency Management Institute and Drew McClellan today for the number of shout outs he's received.
Drew, send Kevin a check.
Yes, I think we may have to revisit the sponsorship message today, Drew. But Drew taught me something 3 years ago. It was called agency math. And while I hired him to help me do that, I do believe he became a mentor in the same aspect too, and that his ability to be able to authentically be able to create thought leadership based on the experience of so many other agencies made me feel much more comfortable of digesting his content than it was him just preaching it without that humongous following out there. And it helped me devote the passion I have to delighting clients with coworkers who I enjoy working with. To also having a passion to make sure that our clients are delighted, our coworkers are delighted, but our company is delighted as well. And growing in that facility, Drew was an inspiration to you, and he was an inspiration to me as well. Yep. And if we give him one more shout out, I think we will be sending him a bill today. But anyway, Drew, thank you for what you've done for both Sharon and I.
Amen. Agreed.
So my last question is, where do you seek inspiration from? And we've just shared a little bit of it, but you're in today we've been talking about artificial intelligence, the legal side of artificial intelligence, probably the last thing people are curious about. We've been talking about agencies who don't think about intellectual property too late. Where do you find your inspiration, being that it seems to be what your core is at, is where it's the not the shiny object side, the fun side of things. It's the necessary evil, so to speak. I don't mean to say that derogatory to you, but the fun part about artificial intelligence, all this stuff's going to do, but someone's got to be wearing the cap of responsibility. Where do you find your inspiration to get all this to be the thought leader that you are?
Well, I think that one of the things that I love about what we do and who we serve is that we get a front row seat to so much creativity. And I am inspired by the art that our clients create, because I believe that good marketing is art as much as it has to be measured as a science. And so I get inspired actually by good advertising and good marketing. I get inspired by art and fashion. I get inspired by seeing somebody take an idea and turn it into something tangible and use that tangible thing to drive a result for somebody else. Those things inspire me very much. And, we kind of get to be at the intersection of business and art, serving agencies every day. And so, yeah, they do inspire me. And they, as much as they can kind of make you want to light your hair on fire some days, because agency owners are kind of comfortable with risk and not so interested in being proactive about their legal affairs, because it's kind of not the sexy side of the business for them.
Right.
So as frustrating as some of those things can be, it goes into the blend, into the recipe with all the good stuff that I just said too.
This is going to sound very defensive as an agency owner, but I don't know as much as we're comfortable with risk, as much as we're excited about creativity.
There you go. That's a nice way to say it.
I agree. Excited about creativity, the excitement about delighting clients, the excitement about working with teams takes more mind share than the risk side has any room for. And so we occupy more of that with the excitement side of things than the risk and requirement side of things.
That's extremely fair. We definitely realize that we are the buzzkill in the room sometimes when it comes to, keeping our clients and their clients safe. But, agency leaders understand that at their core. It's just not their favorite thing about the business.
Yep. And I'll transition that too. Well, we could tease about that being the buzzkill too. It's also a humongous opportunity that's untapped right now. It's how to maximize the value of intellectual property. It's, how to maybe be able to understand how you legally approach this new world of artificial intelligence to reassure your clients that that your approach to this is less risky than potentially other approaches may be going forward, and be a differentiator in the space by understanding some of the legal side of things. Because while we as agency owners may be delighted in creating, things that delight our clients with team members who love to do the work, our clients are asking the risk questions. If we can allow some room in our minds to think about how can this help from intellectual property, this is a humongous asset besides our team members and the contributions that they provide, that this intellectual property may be one of our top assets out there that we've underutilized. How do we shift our mindset on that? I think that's hopefully what some of this podcast can help educate people to today. And then, secondarily, how can potentially looking to see how from a legal perspective, some of these representatives of how you provide your offering back to your clients makes their ability to hire you easier or more comfortable, because the risk officers in their organization feel more comfortable, and you have an opportunity to either engage with those companies faster or engage with those companies larger, or engage with those companies longer term because you're making their job easier to not be so noisy from the risk officer inside their organization.
Absolutely. And I would say, this is particularly relevant to AI, but it's relevant in other areas as well. Agencies are sitting on a unique opportunity right now to be leaders and teachers with their clients when it comes to integrating artificial intelligence into their businesses. Your marketing counterparts at your client organizations are hungry for constructive and creative ways that they can further the business faster.
Right.
Using some of these tools.
Yes.
And they're not getting a lot of inspiration internally at their organizations because they're either talking to the chief information officers or they're talking to the chief legal officers. And both of those functions within the business are designed for risk avoidance, right?
Absolutely.
So you're in a unique position to really educate your client and this is profitable work for you at the end of the day. And
Absolutely.
so, I mean, take advantage of the fact that and have critical conversations with your clients about where they are on AI or really any other technology issues so that you can design for the result that they want, taking into account their comfort level with risk in general.
Absolutely. I think that's so well spoken. We've been talking with Sharon Toerek of Toerek Law. Sharon, we've shared a lot today. You've definitely wet the whistle of many different approaches here. If someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
Yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn at Sharon Toerek, Toerek. On the web, we're at legalandcreative.com.
Sharon, thanks so much for being a guest on our podcast today. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your insights and experience, and we wish you continued success on your journey.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Great talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Growth Fire podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.